The hegemony of 12 suns had ruled the stars for 11,000 years. They controlled hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. No one challenged them. No one dared. They were the masters of everything they touched. And they had touched almost everything in this part of the galaxy. So when their sensors found radio signals coming from a small yellow star, they did what they always did. They sent a delegation. Not to make friends. Not to learn. They sent a delegation to judge whether this new species was worth taking. Ambassador Kethvoran was old by his species' standards. He had visited 37 worlds and brought them all into the hegemony. Some had joined peacefully, most had not. It made no difference to him. The result was always the same. Every species eventually knelt. His ship entered the solar system slowly, giving the primitive inhabitants time to see him coming. He wanted them afraid. Fear made things easier. When he reached Earth's orbit, he broadcast his message on every frequency his technicians could find. The message was simple. It was the same message the hegemony had delivered to countless worlds before. You have been found by the hegemony of 12 suns. Your world now belongs to us. Your people will serve us. Your resources will feed our empire. Resistance will result in destruction. You have one rotation of your planet to agree. Kethvoran waited for the panic. He waited for the begging, the pleading, the desperate offers of tribute. He had seen it all before. Instead, a reply came from something called the United Nations Security Council. They asked him to clarify the terms of surrender. They wanted to know exactly what service meant. They asked about rights, about representation, about the treatment of their people. Kethvoran was confused. No species had ever asked questions. They either fought or surrendered. These humans were doing neither. He reported this strange behavior to Admiral Yethkari, who waited with her battle fleet just beyond the fourth planet. She was not as patient as the ambassador. She had conquered worlds by force, and she believed force was the only language that mattered. They are stalling, she told Kethvoran. Show them what happens to those who waste our time. She ordered a demonstration. A single strike on a coastal city. Not to destroy the planet, just to teach them their place. The city was called Sydney. 8 million people lived there. At 3:47 inches the afternoon, local time, 18 million people died. The city and everything around it simply ceased to exist. The kinetic bombardment from orbit hit with the force of 1,000 nuclear weapons. There was no warning, no chance to run, just fire and silence. Kethvoran watched the aftermath on his screens. He expected screaming on the radio frequencies. He expected chaos. He expected surrender within the hour. What he got was silence. For 6 hours, Earth said nothing. No broadcasts, no messages, no response at all. Kethvoran began to feel something he had not felt in centuries. He felt uncertain. Then a single transmission came from the planet below. It was not from any government. It was not an official response. It was a woman's voice, calm and cold, speaking words that would be remembered for generations. We see you now. We understand what you are. And we will remember Sydney. That was all. The transmission ended, and Earth went silent again. Admiral Yethkari laughed when she heard the recording. She called it the last desperate words of a dying species. She told her officers that humans would surrender within days. They had no ships, no weapons that could touch her fleet. No hope, but she was wrong. Earth was not dying. Earth was waking up. Across the planet, something changed. Old enemies stopped fighting. Countries that had hated each other for centuries began talking. Military officers from every nation gathered in secure bunkers, sharing secrets they had kept for decades. Scientists who had competed against each other now worked side by side. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting itself. They were very, very good at war. They had created weapons that could end their own species. They had built armies and navies and air forces that existed only to destroy other humans. Now, for the first time, they had something else to fight. In Moscow and Washington, in Beijing and London, in every capital and every military base, the same realization spread like fire. They were not alone in the universe, and the universe was hostile. The United Nations Security Council met for the last time as a debating body. When they emerged, they were something new, something harder. They had become the first true government of Earth. Their first act was to send a message to Admiral Yethkari. They requested 1 year to prepare their formal surrender. They claimed they needed time to organize their people, to prevent chaos. to ensure a peaceful transition. The admiral agreed. She was amused by the request. What could primitives possibly accomplish in 1 year? They had no faster-than-light technology. They had no shields. They had nothing but their small blue world and their pathetic radio signals. She settled her fleet into orbit around the red planet and waited. She had nowhere else to be. Conquest was inevitable. In the darkness of space, her sensors showed no activity from Earth. No ships being built. No weapons being tested. Just a quiet world, preparing to surrender. She did not see what was happening underground. She did not see the factories being built in mountains. She did not see the scientists working without sleep. She did not see a species that had decided, together, that they would not go quietly into the night. Earth was not preparing to surrender. Earth was preparing for war. Admiral Yethkari spent the first month watching Earth from her command ship. Her sensors showed the planet going about its normal business. Cities still glowed at night. Transportation networks still moved. The humans seemed to be accepting their fate. Then the planet went dark. It happened over 3 days. First, the satellites stopped transmitting. Thousands of them, all at once, either fell from orbit or simply went silent. Then the radio frequencies that humans loved so much became empty. And finally, a strange haze appeared in the atmosphere, something that blocked her sensors and made the surface invisible. Her science officers told her it was some kind of atmospheric manipulation. The humans had released particles into their air that scattered sensor beams. It was clever for primitives, but it changed nothing. She could still destroy the planet whenever she wanted. She decided to wait. Let them hide in their fog. In 1 year, they would emerge and kneel before her. There was nowhere for them to go. What Yethkari did not understand was that humans were not hiding. They were building. Beneath mountains in Colorado and the Urals, new command centers came to life. These were not the old military bunkers built to survive nuclear war. These were something new, places where the brightest minds from every nation worked together on a single goal. Dr. Sarah Chen was one of them. She had spent her career studying theoretical physics at a university in California. Her work on exotic particles had been interesting but useless. Nobody could build the machines needed to test her theories. Now she had unlimited funding and 10,000 engineers ready to build whatever she designed. The enemy uses quantum fields for their shields, she told the assembled generals during her first briefing. We can disrupt those fields. It will take time, but we can do it. How much time? General Morrison asked. 8 months. Maybe 7 if we skip safety testing. Skip it. Across the world, similar conversations were happening. In China, engineers who had built high-speed trains were now designing ship hulls. In Germany, experts in precision manufacturing were creating weapons systems. In Russia, rocket scientists who had dreamed of Mars were now planning for different destinations. The first human warship was ugly. It looked nothing like the elegant curves of hegemony vessels. It was all angles and armor, built for one purpose, to survive long enough to hurt the enemy. They called it the Churchill, after a leader who had once promised nothing but blood, sweat, and tears. It launched from a hidden facility in Antarctica 5 months after Sydney. It was small, barely larger than a commercial aircraft, but it worked. It flew, and when it fired its weapons at a test target, that target ceased to exist. The humans built more. Faster, bigger, deadlier. They did not sleep. They did not rest. They thought about Sydney and worked harder. General Morrison became the first commander of the United Earth Defense Force. He was 73 years old, a veteran of wars that now seemed small and pointless. He gathered officers from every nation and told them the same thing. Forget everything you know about fighting each other. We have one enemy now. We learn their tactics, we find their weaknesses, and we make them pay for every human life they've taken. The hegemony's monitoring stations were the first target. Small, automated outposts scattered throughout nearby star systems, watching for any sign of trouble. Human ships, running silent and slow, crept toward them one by one. The first station was destroyed 7 months after Sydney. The humans used a simple trick. They threw rocks, asteroids, carefully redirected, slammed into the station at speeds no shield could stop. It was not elegant. It was not sophisticated, but it worked. More stations fell. The hegemony barely noticed at first. Equipment failed sometimes. Space was dangerous. They sent repair crews and replacement stations, but the crews never arrived. The replacement stations were destroyed before they could be activated. Something was hunting in the dark between stars. Admiral Yethkari received reports of the losses but did not connect them. Humans had no ships. Humans had no way to leave their system. The failures had to be coincidence or equipment malfunction. She was still certain of this when she received a strange message from the planet below. It came on the anniversary of Sydney's destruction. 1 year has passed. We are ready to discuss terms. Yethkari smiled. Finally, the primitives had accepted reality. She prepared her landing craft and her ceremonial guard. She would accept their surrender personally. Her communications officer interrupted her preparations. Admiral, we are receiving reports of attacks. Multiple stations, multiple systems, all at once. That is impossible. Admiral, we have also lost contact with the third monitoring network. All 47 stations. Yethkari felt that strange uncertainty again. She looked at the view screen showing Earth, still hidden behind its veil of particles. What have they been doing down there? The answer came an hour later, when a human fleet emerged from behind their moon. Over 300 ships. Small, ugly, primitive ships. Ships that should not exist. The year was over. And Earth was not surrendering. Admiral Yethkari watched the human fleet approach and felt something she had not felt in 50 years of service. She felt surprise. Her tactical officers scrambled to analyze the enemy ships. They were crude things, built without grace or elegance. Where hegemony vessels flowed like water, these looked like bricks with engines attached. Their weapons were primitive kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, basic energy beams. They are no threat. Her first officer assured her. Our shields can handle anything they fire. Then why? Yethkari asked slowly. Are there so many of them? 342 ships. The humans had built 342 warships in 1 year. The hegemony shipyards could produce perhaps 20 vessels in the same time. How had primitives built so many? She would learn the answer later, when the war was studied by hegemony scholars. Humans did not build ships the way the hegemony did. They did not carefully craft each vessel with master artisans over months of work. They built ships the way they built everything in factories, on assembly lines, with interchangeable parts and workers who never stopped. Every car factory on Earth had been converted to ship production. Every steel mill, every electronics plant, every manufacturing facility. Humans had spent centuries learning to mass-produce machines. Now they mass-produced weapons of war. The first battle lasted 6 hours. Yethkari's fleet destroyed 212 human ships. Their shields held against most attacks. Their weapons cut through human armor like paper. By every measurement the hegemony used, it was a complete victory. But the hegemony lost 43 vessels, 43 ships, against primitives who had discovered spaceflight barely a century ago. It was unthinkable. It was impossible, and yet the debris floated in space. Undeniable proof of what had happened. The humans had discovered something during the battle. Their conventional weapons could not penetrate hegemony shields, but their weapons did not need to. When a shield absorbed enough energy, it began to flicker, and in that flicker, a fast enough projectile could pass through. They called it shield saturation. It required 10 ships, firing together at the same target. 9 would die, but the 10th would kill. Yethkari pulled her fleet back to Mars and sent an urgent message to Hegemony Command. She needed reinforcements. She needed more ships. The humans were not surrendering, they were learning. General Morrison received the casualty reports in his command bunker. 212 ships lost, 30,000 crew members dead. It was the worst single-day loss in human military history. He looked at the numbers for a long moment. Then he called his production chiefs. How many ships can you give me in the next 30 days? 84, sir. Maybe 90 if we push the workers. Push them. The war became a matter of mathematics. The hegemony had better technology, but they built ships slowly and carefully. Humans built ships fast and did not care if they were ugly. For every ship the hegemony destroyed, 2 more took its place. The second battle was worse than the first. The third was worse still. Human tactics evolved with each engagement. They learned which shield frequencies to target. They learned where hegemony armor was weakest. They learned to coordinate attacks in ways that made the enemy waste ammunition. Young officers who had never seen combat became veterans in weeks. Those who survived shared their knowledge with those who came after. A library of tactics grew: what worked, what did not, how to hurt the enemy and survive. Lieutenant James Okonkwo flew his first mission 3 months after the war began. By the 6th month, he was commanding a squadron. By the 9th month, he was one of the most experienced pilots in the fleet. They don't understand us, he told reporters during a rare interview on Earth. They think war is about winning battles. For them, it is. But we know better. War is about making the enemy pay more than they can afford. Every day they stay here. They bleed. Every ship we destroy, they cannot replace. We will keep bleeding them until they leave or until one of us is dead. The Hegemony High Command received Admiral Yethkari's increasingly desperate reports and finally decided to end the situation. They dispatched the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, 200 of their finest warships, veterans of a dozen conquest campaigns. The fleet arrived in Earth's solar system expecting to find exhausted humans ready to surrender. Instead, they found a graveyard of debris from previous battles and a message broadcasting on all frequencies. Welcome to our home. We have been waiting for you. Admiral Chen Wei-lin watched the reinforcements arrive from her command ship. She was 47 years old, a former submarine commander who had spent her career hiding in ocean depths, waiting for moments to strike. Space combat was not so different. Signal all ships, she ordered. Execute Operation Homecoming. The human fleet did not attack the reinforcements. Instead, they retreated, pulling back toward Earth, abandoning positions they had held for months. The hegemony commanders were confused but pleased. Finally, the humans were breaking. They followed the retreating fleet eagerly, sensing victory. They did not see the trap until it was too late. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet was the pride of the hegemony. 200 warships, each one crewed by veterans of countless conquests. Their commander, Admiral Vethnor, had personally overseen the subjugation of 16 species. He had never lost a battle. He watched the human fleet retreat and felt only contempt. Primitives, he announced to his bridge crew. They have finally learned their place. His ships pursued the humans toward the 3rd planet. They moved slowly, savoring the chase, broadcasting surrender demands on every frequency. They expected the humans to turn and kneel at any moment. Instead, they received a strange transmission. Admiral Vethnor. The voice was human, female, speaking through a translation device. My name is Admiral Chen Wei-lin. Before this battle begins, I want you to understand something. Vethnor laughed. You wish to discuss terms of surrender? No. I wish to teach you about proportional response. On the main view screen, a map appeared. It showed not Earth's solar system, but hegemony space. One world was highlighted, a colony planet called Kethvora, home to 40 million hegemony citizens. 1 year ago, you destroyed Sydney. 18 million of our people died in seconds. Your Admiral Yethkari called it a demonstration, a lesson in power. The map zoomed in on Kethvora. Tiny dots appeared around the planet, hundreds of them. Those dots are our ships, not warships, just engines strapped to bombs. They have been waiting there for 6 months, silent and hidden. They can destroy your colony in minutes. Admiral Vethnor felt something cold settle in his stomach. You are bluffing. I am not. Contact your planet. Ask them what they see. He did. The response came quickly, panicked voices confirming that unknown vessels had appeared in orbit. The Planetary Defense Force was scrambling, but there were too many targets. They could not stop them all. Here is your lesson in proportional response, Admiral Chen continued. We could destroy your colony. 40 million lives for 18 million. It would not bring back Sydney. It would not end this war, but it would teach you something your hegemony has never learned. She paused. We could, but we choose not to. Not yet. The dots around Kethvora did not fire. They simply waited, a threat hanging in silence. Your hegemony has conquered thousands of worlds. You have never faced a species like us. We do not fight because we think we will win. We fight because we refuse to lose. We have spent centuries preparing to destroy ourselves. We have weapons that can end all life on our own planet. Do you understand what that means? Admiral Vethnor understood. For the first time in his career, he faced an enemy who was willing to die rather than surrender. An enemy who could accept mutual destruction as a victory. Leave our system, Admiral Chen said. Take your fleets. Tell your masters that Earth is not worth the cost. We will not pursue you. We will not seek revenge. We simply want to be left alone. Vethnor looked at his tactical display. His fleet outnumbered the humans. His technology was superior. He could win this battle. But even if he won, Those ships around Kethvora would fire. 40 million of his people would die. And more human ships would come. There were always more human ships. He opened a channel to his fleet. All ships, hold position. I need to. Admiral Yethkari's voice interrupted him. She had been listening from her damaged flagship, watching the confrontation. Her pride would not allow retreat. This is Admiral Yethkari, assuming command of combined forces. Admiral Vethnor is relieved for cowardice. All ships, advance and destroy the human fleet. We do not negotiate with prey. Vethnor tried to protest, but his communication systems went dead. Yethkari had overridden his command codes. Admiral Chen watched the hegemony fleet resume its advance. She had offered them a choice. They had chosen war. Signal our ships at Kethvora, she ordered. Stand down. Return to hiding positions. Her tactical officer stared at her. Admiral, they rejected our terms. We should, no. Chen's voice was hard. We are not them. We do not kill civilians because their leaders are fools. Those 40 million people are not our enemies. They are victims of the same empire that destroyed Sydney. She turned to face her bridge crew. Every one of them had lost someone in Sydney. Every one of them wanted revenge. We will defeat their fleet. We will show them that we cannot be conquered. But we will not become monsters in the process. That is what separates us from them. The Battle of Earth began 3 hours later. Admiral Yethkari threw everything she had at the human fleet. Her ships were fewer now, worn down by months of fighting, but still superior in every way that mattered. Superior technology, superior training, superior firepower. The humans had something else. They had desperation, they had fury, and they had home ground. The fighting lasted 11 hours. The hegemony broke through human lines twice and was pushed back both times. Human ships died by the dozens, but more kept coming, reserves that had been hidden in asteroid fields, behind moons, in places the hegemony had not thought to look. When the sun rose over the Pacific Ocean, the hegemony fleet was gone. Not retreated, not defeated, destroyed. Every ship, every crew member, every admiral who had thought humans were prey. Admiral Yethkari died when her flagship broke apart under concentrated fire from 30 human vessels. Her last transmission was a scream of disbelief. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin watched the debris field spread across the void. She felt no joy, only exhaustion, and a cold determination for what came next. Signal all surviving ships, she ordered. We are not done yet. The Hegemony High Command received news of the Third Fleet's destruction in stunned silence. 243 warships, gone. 3 admirals, dead. The greatest military disaster in 4,000 years. Grand Admiral Kethvoris, Supreme Commander of all Hegemony forces, stared at the report for a long time. He was old even by his species standards. A veteran of wars that had faded into legend. He had thought he had seen everything. He had been wrong. How many ships do we have left in that sector? He asked. None, Grand Admiral. The humans destroyed our repair stations, our supply depots, everything. We would need to send a new fleet from the core worlds. How long would that take? 6 months. Perhaps 8. Kethvoris looked at the star map on his wall. Earth was a tiny dot, barely visible among the thousands of hegemony worlds. One small planet, one primitive species. And they had done this. In 6 months, he said quietly. How many ships will the humans have? No one answered. They all knew the truth. The humans built ships faster than the hegemony could replace losses. In 6 months, they would have 1,000 vessels. In a year, 5,000. And every ship would be better than the last, as humans learned and adapted and improved. We have a choice, Kethvoris said. We can send everything we have, every ship, every soldier, every resource, and crush them through sheer force. We would win eventually. But the cost. He did not finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood. The cost would be the empire itself. While the hegemony focused on Earth, other conquered species would see their chance. Rebellions would spread, the 12 suns would burn, or we can let them go. Pretend this sector does not exist. Build a wall around their space and never return. His advisors shifted uncomfortably. No species had ever been allowed to leave the hegemony. The precedent was dangerous, but so was the alternative. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin did not wait for the hegemony to make its choice. She had learned something important in the past year. You could not trust empires to do the right thing. You had to force them. The human fleet left Earth's solar system 3 weeks after the Battle of Earth. They were not looking for more fights with the hegemony. They were looking for allies. The first world they visited was called Kethvara by the hegemony. Its original name, in the language of the species who lived there, was Harmony. They had been conquered 2,000 years ago. Their culture erased. Their people reduced to labor units. A human ship entered orbit and broadcast a simple message. The hegemony fleet that came to Earth has been destroyed. Every ship, every soldier. The hegemony can be beaten. You are not alone anymore. The response was slow at first. The people of Harmony had forgotten how to hope. They had been slaves for so long that freedom seemed like a dream. Then one voice answered. Then 10. Then thousands. We hear you. We believe you. Tell us what to do. Admiral Chen gave them the same answer she gave to every world she visited. We cannot free you. Only you can free yourselves. But we can teach you what we learned. We can share our technology, our tactics, our knowledge, and when you rise, we will stand with you. Within 6 months, 17 species had joined what humans called the Liberation Alliance. Some were powerful, with hidden weapons and secret armies. Others were weak, with nothing but their anger and their numbers. All of them had been told the same lie for generations, that the hegemony was invincible. Now they knew the truth. The first coordinated uprising happened on a factory world called Nexus. The hegemony used it to build components for their warships. 3 million workers, watched by a garrison of 10,000 soldiers. The workers had been planning for months. Human advisors had taught them how to make weapons from factory equipment, how to disable communications, how to fight in enclosed spaces where hegemony technology could not help. The uprising lasted 4 days. When it was over, 3 million former slaves controlled a world that produced a quarter of the hegemony's military components. More uprisings followed. Not all succeeded. Many were crushed with terrible brutality, but each one taught lessons that were shared across the alliance. Each failure made the next attempt more likely to succeed. Grand Admiral Kethvoris watched his empire begin to crumble and finally understood what Earth had unleashed. It was not just a war. It was an idea, the idea that the hegemony could be resisted, could be defeated, could be overthrown. Ideas were harder to kill than ships. 5 years after Sydney, representatives from 32 species gathered on Earth for the first Alliance Council. They met in a new city built on the ruins of what had been destroyed. The city was called New Sydney, and at its center stood a monument to the 18 million who had died. Admiral Chen Wei-lin, now the senior military commander of the Alliance, addressed the council. She was older now, her hair gray, her face lined with scars from battles that had nearly killed her, but her voice was still strong. 32 species, she said. 600 worlds. 300 billion people, no longer slaves. 5 years ago, we were alone. We were primitives who had barely left our own planet. The hegemony thought we would be easy prey. She paused, looking at the representatives from dozens of worlds. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien she could barely recognize them as living beings. All of them had come because of what Earth had started. They wanted war. They thought they understood what that meant. But they had forgotten something that every species learns eventually. War is not about who has the better weapons or the bigger fleet. War is about who refuses to quit. Who keeps fighting when hope is gone? Who would rather die standing than live kneeling? She smiled a small, tired smile. They should have been more careful about who they asked. The Alliance fought the hegemony for another 30 years. It was not a quick victory or an easy one. Billions died, worlds burned. There were moments when all seemed lost, when the hegemony's remaining forces pushed back with desperate fury. But the Alliance did not quit. They could not quit. They had tasted freedom, and they would never accept chains again. When the last hegemony fortress fell, when the last admiral surrendered, when the 12 suns that had ruled an empire for 11,000 years finally went dark, humans did not celebrate. They mourned, they remembered, and they began to rebuild. The galaxy would never be the same. Neither would humanity. They had learned something about themselves in the fires of that first war, something they would carry with them as they reached for new stars and new possibilities. They had learned that even the smallest world, even the youngest species, could change everything. All it took was the courage to try.